Welcome to the show. My name is Dave Starrett, and this is Disruptive Truth. We have a special guest today, Alex Demczak. Alex is the author of a brand new book called The Sale with best-selling author Jon Gordon. Many of you have heard of Alex and Jon and the work that they are doing in businesses and college campuses. Alex is a former SEC quarterback with Missouri. He graduated with a degree in communications and with a minor in business. And he's been known for starting businesses. He's started Thrive U, Coach's Corner, MU Courtesy Carts, Thrive Speakers, Ignite Small Groups. And he is training businesses and corporations and also students how to be leaders and how to close the sale, but also with integrity. Alex, great to have you on the show.
Dave, thank you so much for having me on here. I love your show and what you're doing. And I just think back to when I read your book years ago. And so it's an honor to be on your show. And yeah, thanks for including me.
Well, thank you. Well, this book you've written, The Sale, my full-time day job, I'm in medical sales. I work in big pharma. Like you, I am passionate about sports and leadership and teaching and equipping teams. But this new book of yours has received, you got some endorsements. I saw Dave Ramsey. I love Dave Ramsey. He's the Baby Steps millionaire.
He's the man.
NBA player Michael Porter Jr. And you have some great endorsements already. What inspired you and Jon to write this book?
Well, there's a lot of things. I think for one, Jon and I, just in working with, like you said earlier, teams, businesses, schools, you just hear a lot of the same common themes. And I think over the last few years, whether it's cancel culture or Me Too movement, all these different things of you see on the news, these huge leaders who have these massive moral failures that just impact so many people. And I think all the time I'm talking with people who maybe are on the other side of that, who have experienced, maybe it's a pastor or someone in ministry who led so many people and had this amazing following, but then made some decisions that really negatively affected a lot of people. And I think the book, The Sale, like you said earlier, it is about being very successful, but at the same time doing it in a way where you have contentment and you can sleep well at night. And when you look back on your career, you can know that you did the things you did to the best of your ability. You maximized your potential, but you did it in a way where you did your best, but you did it the right way. And I think that's the heart behind this book is encouraging people that they can be very successful in business or sports or politics, like you said. But I think there's a way to do it in where you look back and say, man, I stewarded the gifts that I had well and didn't just do it for my own glory or power.
Yeah, I like what you say at the beginning of this book. You say that there's this misconception. This was in the introduction. Now, this book, I really like it. It's kind of like a fable. It's this fictional story. It reminds me a lot of some of Jon's other books. And you partner with Jon Gordon, who wrote this. But it's a story. And in the beginning, you kind of give an introduction. And you say that there's this lie in our culture that a lot of people think that in order to be successful, you have to lie a little bit. You have to bend the system. Maybe you heard a few people along the way. And sometimes we think about people that are very successful. We think about some of the shows of some of these lead entrepreneurs that we respect. And then along the way, they're dishonest. They stab a couple of their, entrepreneurs and co-owners on their way up. But you're saying there's a better way. So just realistically thinking, how is that possible for us to be successful and do it a different way?
Well, that's a great question, because we are, like what you just said, we are kind of conditioned to just expect when there's leaders in high positions of authority or people we look up to, we've kind of trained as a society, like, man, if we really knew what was going on behind closed doors, that person's maybe not as good as what we think they are. And of course, none of us are perfect. We're all sinful. We all mess up and make mistakes. I think to answer your question, I think it takes, on the leader's part, it takes looking forward into the future and saying, rather than like, what type of job do I want to do? Or, what am I doing? It's what kind of person do I want to be? And I think, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? And I think when you start kind of like John Maxwell, with, beginning with the end in mind, I think that's just such a great quote and a great statement, because it's like, if you just live for kind of the short, consequences or the short opportunities, I want to chase this quick money, or I want to cut a corner to make this sale, or to whatever it is for your industry specifically. It's like when you're kind of tunnel vision into those like small metrics, I think you make decisions that you then a lot of times regret. But if you have this mindset of, what's my long-term vision of not just this one sale, or not just this one game, or not just this one practice, but like when I think about my career, how do I want not only to be viewed, but then how do I want to look back on everything I've built? And, you hear of these stories of, even after, people have passed on, I think about even in the last year or two, there's been some pretty famous pastors who, after they even passed away, there's a lot of things that came out in the news. And I think also on the flip side of someone like Billy Graham, which I can talk a little bit more later, it's like when he passed away a few years ago, no matter what side of the political party that you're on, no matter what your views are on faith things or non-faith related items, there was an outpouring for Billy Graham, and it doesn't matter what news channel you watched, people were celebrating his life.
Yeah.
And you just really kind of came together and said, this was a person that brought people together, but in a lot of ways, integrity was at the core of his ministry and his life. And I have a few stats I'll share as well, just about some of the ways he set up his integrity in his life practically. But I think about, man, someone like that who had a 60-year career, which is so rare in today's society.
Yeah.
I
love Billy Graham. He's one of my heroes. And you're right. I don't even know if we'll ever see someone like him, who came at a time in which he spoke truth. And you're right. People from all different backgrounds will say how much they respected him. I remember when I was in college, he came to my little hometown of Stanton, Virginia. I went to Liberty University, and I heard he was about to speak at this graduation of this small women's college where his daughter, I think, or maybe his granddaughter, was earning her master's degree. And so I thought, I want to go meet Billy Graham. So I went, and he was an older man, but I went to this event. I remember going backstage just so I could shake his hand. I walked up to him, and I was nervous, but I thought, I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm going to fake it like I'm supposed to. And just walked up to him and shook his hand and told him how much I respected him. And but I have a ton of respect. I'm curious there. You mentioned something about his life of integrity. What did you learn from his life? You mentioned something.
And I'm like you as well. I've just had so much from afar, reading his books and reading about his life. There was a story that I've always loved about Billy Graham, that when he was in his 30s, he started to climb, not in like a selfish way about like, it's all about me, but he was kind of ascending into this leader in America, and people just knew who he was. And he was a good looking guy, a tall guy. People really respected him. And he was introspective enough to see the success that he was having. And so he was actually in this hotel in Modesto, California, and his leadership team was there. And he kind of called the team together, and he said, we're doing great. Things are going awesome. But I want each one of you to go back to your hotel room, and I want you to write down all the things that you think could maybe stop this success, could like stop us from achieving the success that we're having. And so they all took an hour. They won't go back to their hotel room. And when they came back, they kind of created these pillars and these items that they really wanted to live by and say, you know what, these areas need to be solid in our organization. And so it was later named the Modesto Manifesto. You maybe have heard of it. And so just some of the core things that they talked about, number one, it was money. They wanted financially to be sound. When they went out and raised money and had these huge events, they wanted to be, just above reproach in all areas. And I remember reading that Billy Graham only had a fixed salary of $15,000 a year, and everything else went back into the ministry. And obviously that was a while back. So with inflation, as we all know, it's, probably would be a little more than that these days, but they didn't want anyone to question, what are we doing with these funds? Mm-hmm. Marital commitment. Billy Graham had a 63-year marriage to his wife, Ruth. And that's also uncommon in today's society. And he did certain things when he's on the road and traveling. He had this amazing ministry, but he said, you know what, I'm going to set myself up for success and value my relationship with my wife. So even when I'm on the road thousands of miles away, she can trust me and know that I'm making decisions that have our best interest in mind. And, he was so good at speaking well. The team said, we want to be good at speaking well of other organizations. And Billy Graham had people that came against him at times and said, didn't agree, but he was a person when it came to racial reconciliation, he brought organizations, ministries together. And so they said, as a team, we really want to make sure that we speak well of other people. And the final thing they said, number 4, was they wanted to be accurate in their reporting. And so a lot of these huge events, these rallies, hundreds and thousands of people would come, and they would actually have a third party count the names and the numbers of people, because other organizations would falsely report how many people would come to their events. Yeah. And so just like a small detail like that, they said, you know what, we're going to have someone from that local area that we go to, they're going to count and they're going to report. And so I just, when your first question of like, what does this practically look like? I think that's such a great example of someone who had amazing success and obviously led so many people to Christ and had such an amazing, thriving ministry, but he was intentional, and he had the foresight to know that we are having this massive success, but let's put some guardrails into place so we can not only just have success for right now, but 30 years from now, we can still have long-term success. And that's what he did. He had a 60-year career. His message was heard by an estimated 2.2 billion people. And so God's word was, through him, heard by just a lot of people, including yourself. So it's just pretty inspiring to look at a guy like that who, from the world standards, had it all. He had all this success, but then he was also very intentional that I want to steward my gifts and my abilities for God's glory, not only just for right here and right now, but for the long term.
Yes. What a great example. And I know there's probably some people listening who, may think, yeah, but that's Billy Graham. He's super Christian. I'm just a sales rep, and you don't understand the people I'm working with and my team. And there's little things that they may encounter. One of the things that stood out in the book, this sales rep, this fictional character, his name's Matt, right? He's the main character in the story of your book, The Sale.
Thanks for reading it, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I loved it. It was great. And, it stood out. I think he is, the story is this young man, he is the grandson of the CEO, chairman of the board, executive of this company that makes, I guess it's airplane parts, right?
Exactly.
For airplanes. And, but a lot of people think, hey, he's just here because this guy is just here because his grandfather owns it. And so this young guy, Matt, he's trying to prove himself. And yet his boss doesn't really respect him. And there's kind of pressure that he's facing about, to do well. And then they have the opportunity of a lifetime. And, but as this is all going on, leading up, Matt is struggling in his home life. His wife is thinking about divorcing him. And one of the things that you mentioned is that Matt went home, and he wasn't emotionally present. He wasn't emotionally present. And that's something like a lot of people, we work from home. We're thinking about, the pandemic has kind of changed that. And at times, I'm around my family, but at times I'm newly married, and, my stepdaughter, she's 8. And even today I'm at lunch, and she's like, you want to play a game? And I'm thinking, okay, let's do a really short game. But, how can we just practically speak that? What do you encourage business leaders? How can they be emotionally present at home when they're home, and then emotionally present at work when they're supposed to be at work? You have any thoughts or advice for that? Because that's something I'm still working and trying to get better at.
Yeah, that's a great point. And what you mentioned about working from home, in some ways, it's gotten a lot worse for people these last 2 years, right? Because before there was some separation of, I go to work, I come home, and there's separation. But now with work from home, it's changed everything. And I think that's a really great question that you pose. I think the first thought that comes to my mind is you can't pour out until you're filled up. And I know for me, and you referenced the story in the book, in some ways, Matt, the main character, in some ways, I think was me. And the way I wrote it was, in some ways, I was in sales, and I was doing great and worked for an amazing company, just an awesome culture. But I got in this cycle where I was so consumed with, I'd have a really good month. It was a lot of it was based on commissions, and I would have a really good month. And instead of being content and grateful, I would get in this cycle of, okay, now I've done this, how can I make more? And it was kind of like this, almost like a hamster wheel that I couldn't get off. And actually last September, I start getting randomly, in all the sports I've done, like you, I never have had any heart issues. And I all of a sudden have this racing heartbeat. This is last September. And it was really bizarre. It freaked me out. And so I went to the doctor, they did an EKG, and they said, everything looks fine. But they said, what are you doing like for work? And I said, and I kind of spilled out everything that I was doing. And this is while I had a full-time job and was wanting to do great at work and all my other side hustles and things like that. And they said, you know what, honestly, we think this is stress induced. You've, the amount of things that you're doing is you've probably brought a lot of this on yourself, and you're putting these things. And so they referred me to this Christian counselor, and I meet with him for a few sessions, and it was honestly very good. It's what I needed. I needed that. And he told me, he said, Alex, you're trying to do, 6 things really well, but really you should only be doing 2 or 3 things well. He said, first, you got, your relationship with God and obviously your family, and now you're a dad. Like, you need to make sure those are in the right order before you try to do all these other things. And so I had to learn that I needed to scale back. And I was 29 when, I'm still 29 today. And that's what he told me. And it's crazy that how many other people are going through a similar thing where they've kind of they're just trying to go, but then they don't ever take the step back. And so it was an amazing company. Like I love the company I worked for, but I actually, right before Christmas, I quit and I went all in on my speaking and book writing. And just what's crazy is just to see the doors that open through going all in on something, for one, but 2, I mean, all that went away as far as my stress. And I just had to learn, like, to be present at home, I need to be able to turn things off. And so it's a simple thing for me, as I heard a few months ago, they said, you need to put your phone to bed before you go to bed. And so literally, this has just been an easy, practical discipline, maybe for your listeners, is before I go to bed, my phone is plugged into my office downstairs. And then when I go up to bed, I don't have a phone with me. And like, even that small discipline has been revolutionary for me, because I used to, back when I was in commission sales, I was at midnight firing off emails, and, I was doing great, but like, that was not good for my mental health, my mental clarity. And to your point earlier about even like now with my daughter, it's like, am I just going to be home and not be present and just kind of halfway connect and raise my daughter in a way where she's going to be like, yeah, dad's here, but not really here? Or am I going to, and of course I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect, but am I going to try to shut off these devices, get down on the floor and hang out with her? And, she's 1.5 and do things, and so it's like, it's hard and it's a discipline, and I don't think we're ever going to get it, perfect. But I think there's simple things like that of, even for me, just the devices, I don't have social media on my phone. It's like, I have it on a desktop, and, my wife helps me post some stuff for my social media, but I don't even have it on my phone, because the distraction, the time that's wasted on it. I think a recent study came out that the average millennial spends 8 hours on their phone per day. And wow. I just think about a person like Billy Graham. I think about a role model like Tim Tebow. I think about these people, and I think, do they spend 8 or 9 hours on their phone per day?
No.
Or, I guess Billy Graham obviously.
I don't think Billy Graham had TikTok.
Yeah, I don't know if Billy Graham had TikTok, but but my point is, like, people like that, or even people in today's society that are making a huge impact, it's hard for me to believe that those type of people would be spending that amount of time on just sometimes just garbage, that you're taking in on social media. And so for me, I have to assess, like, okay, if I want to have a life similar, and obviously we're all created in our own unique giftings and skill sets, but if I want to have a similar impact, I need to replicate those things in my life that allow me to have success in those areas, rather than saying, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to spend with my daughter, I don't have time for all these things, when the reality is, if I'm anywhere close to what the average millennial is of 8 hours on my phone, well, man, I surely have time. It's just, I need to reallocate my time.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there might be other leaders out there, people trying to be like you, trying to be speakers and authors. And for me, I had written some books, and I thought, well, I need to do this. And just the more I'm thinking about it, my wife is expecting, we'll have a baby boy here in 7 weeks, and
Let's go. That's
we
awesome.
recently, yeah, we're excited, and we she just got off social media recently, and I just met with a group yesterday to you know manage that for me, here starting soon, and just to pay them, because I think we
Yeah.
want to be smart, but there's a lot of things like that as leaders that it's probably wise for us to delegate that,
Yeah.
because there's some companies that they do that full time, and we need to be wise in that. But it can be a time waster. I know I've wasted a ton of time when I could have been making extra sales calls, when I was looking at random comments on Instagram, or even sports, looking at when I could have been making calls, for work. So great point. Let's talk about this book a little bit more. Two of my favorite characters in this story, Matt is struggling. I love the grandfather. His Jerry, who's the grandfather. He seems to be this rock, this man of character, this man who Matt looks up to, but in his heart, he kind of doesn't know if he'll ever be like that.
Mm.
And but then unexpectedly, he meets Randy, and Randy is working at the pizza restaurant. And it's interesting that Randy is a man of influence. As Matt walks up on one occasion, he sees Randy talking with a CEO of a company, and then he comes back and he sees Randy meeting with a like a college student. But this man, Randy, I won't give the whole story away for the readers. I highly recommend the book, The Sale. But this man, Randy, has a lot of integrity. He doesn't just speak it, but he lives it. And I just got to thinking about you, Alex. Who are some of the Randys in your life? People that have impacted your life, who not only taught you the truth, but they lived it as well.
That's great. Well, gosh, thank you for some of this summary. I feel like I need to bring you on as a book promoter. You're doing a pretty good job of talking about the book. So thank you so much. And just honored that you read it and taking the time to do that. And yeah, well, first off, a shout out to the real life Randy. There's a guy named Randy Sutherland who lives in Springfield, Illinois, and owns Dylan's Pizza. And
Really?
So, you'll read about in the book, that was someone in my life who, being in middle school and high school, had a major impact on my life. And so I just had to give him the shout out in the book. And there, if you're ever going through Springfield, Illinois, you'll have to get some Dylan's Pizza.
Yes,
it's very good. But yeah, I mean, from the time I was young and even now, just seeking people who are older, wiser than me, who have been through experiences, people like Jon Gordon. He said, I'm just a sponge when I'm around him, trying to learn as much as I can about not only the speaking business, but just all the different things that come with it and the things that he's been through and experienced. And gosh, my family, I definitely wouldn't have been, I think, qualified to write this book if it wasn't for those people in my life. And I think it just is an encouragement to me, because it's like, when I was, now when I was looking up to all these mentors and still do, it's like, how can I practically now do that for other people in my life, whether they're younger than me, or it's going to get coffee with people, or just being in small groups, things like that. How can I kind of give this gift to others that I've received? Because, I'm nothing special, but it's just the things that they've taught me has just been super helpful and practical, and allowed me to, think more introspectively about my life. Like, what do I want this to look like? But obviously no one's perfect, and we mess up every day, but it's just having the grace to continue to walk in truth. And yeah. So Randy Sutherland has been a big impact.
and that's fantastic. He's a real person. So when
Yeah.
I'm in Missouri, and tell me again, his pizza place is called Dylan?
Yeah, so Randy Sutherland, actually in Springfield, Illinois, it's called Dylan's Pizza. So you'll see in the book, Randy in the book, owns a bunch of, obviously started Dylan's Pizza. And what you referenced earlier is when Matt walks up to him, he's helping this employee, and Matt says, do you have one person that works for you? And he says, no, I have about 250 employees. I have all these employees around. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's cool. And I think that's, to your point, I think the book is written in a way that it hopefully appeals to people that are in that corporate audience that are kind of used to, because I really enjoy books that, for my wife, for example, if I gave her a book that said, hey, read this book on the 10 ways to build wealth or something, she'd probably look at it and be like, all right, well, I don't have time to read that. But, she read John's book, The Energy Bus, and loved it. And so I think for people like her, even that maybe wouldn't read the 10 steps to do this, but they might read a story. I think that was some of the heart behind it too, is like, what about creating an awesome story that also has these principles that I think can really make an impact in your life?
Yeah, I like that you did that. It's it's kind of stirred some curiosity and some interest in my own life. I know about 10 years ago, Josh McDowell, who was a Christian speaker with this group called Crew. It used to be called Campus
Yeah.
Crusade for Christ. And he's an older guy. He used to speak to, he still does. He's like 80 now. But this group, this campus ministry had read his book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And they said, and he had written this book called More Than a Carpenter. And
Yep, I've
so
read that.
Josh, you've heard of it? More Than a
Yep,
Carpenter?
yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Josh asked me to take his content and create a dialogue, a conversation called the Coffeehouse Chronicles on these topics of like, is the Bible true? And I did it. I wrote the books really quickly with Josh, and we, used these for these, took a lot of his research, and I kind of created a dialogue. But this isn't a promotion for my books. That was 10 years ago. And I look back at those books now and I'm like, some of the dialogue, so cheesy. What was I thinking back then, when I read my old books. But you're right. Simple stories can captivate the emotions and the interest. Like there's a lot of important issues out there, like in finance, in integrity, that a lot of people out there may not be interested in. But you allow them, and what you do so effectively in this book is I think your readers will relate to some way to what Matt is going through. They'll understand the struggles, the tension that he has when he, his kids, when he does it, he promises his son that he's going to be at a ball game and he doesn't show up. These little things along the way, I think a lot of dads and moms in the business world will relate to this story. And so you do it so effectively, and great job. And that's inspired me that, okay, maybe I need to use some creativity and write a fictional work.
Yeah.
And,
well, gosh, thanks for saying that. It means a lot coming from you. And I think about, when I even think about like integrity and the definition of integrity, I think about, Tony Dungy, who I'm sure you're familiar with. He says that integrity is doing what's right versus doing what's convenient. And to your point of like, I think there's a little bit of Matt in all of us. I think that's a great point, because I think every day we have opportunities to do the convenient thing, whether it's in our jobs or at home or wherever. We all have the opportunity. We're presented that opportunity to do the convenient thing. But I think the question is like, if you are, living in integrity, you're saying, you know what, even if this is the harder thing, I'm going to trust and I'm going to walk in this way. And even if it means, without giving away anything in the book, even if there's some ramifications that come with living in truth and doing the right thing, I think that's what we have to do as people that are striving to live with integrity. We have to say, you know what, I'm being offered this convenient opportunity, but I'm choosing to go the other direction, even when it's hard, even when people are against you, even when you feel like the world is conspiring against you. You have to say, you know what, I believe in a better and a bigger future, and I'm going to continue walking the way that I feel is right and is in truth.
Alex, that's great. Walk us through these 4 laws. Law number 1 is
integrity builds trust.
Integrity builds trust. And then and law number 2 is integrity allows for long-term success, right?
Yes, long-term.
And then what's number 3?
Integrity equals your best self.
What do you mean by that? Integrity.
Yeah, so if you think about your life, if you think about, like, let's say there's an unforgiveness issue that you have, or you have maybe someone told you something when you were in high school, they called you ugly, and you've kind of always just, I guess, just, it's kind of been like a tape playing over and over in your head. You've kind of just always held on to those comments. It's kind of like you have this backpack, and every time you get a comment or something like this, you just put this rock in your backpack. And as you're walking along, as you continue to add more to this backpack, as you start to walk, you're getting weighed down. And at some point, I think in your life, I mean, I'm just talking about unforgiveness for this part right here. It's like, at some point you have to bring to light those issues, and you have to deal with them and work through them. And so part of that is saying, you know what, I'm choosing to take the rock out of the backpack and throw it down. And eventually you get to the point where you can take off this backpack. And I think, when you're dealing with your own issues, when you're dealing with your own stuff, your baggage, or maybe a rock in that situation, it's really hard for you to be effective in impacting others and pouring into other people's lives when you got your own stuff going on. And I think integrity frees you to live. And if you have these just like in the book, and Matt has this, he's dealing with all this stress and anxiety because of this decision, in the same way in our own lives, if you have stuff going on behind closed doors that maybe no one else knows about, you're kind of living two lives, and that is just an exhausting way to live. And so, I mean, for all of us, I think there's ways that you can relate to, gosh, when you're living in truth and you're bringing things to the light. I have a friend named Nick. We meet almost once a week. We're for sure texting every day about just, we're bouncing things off each other. Hey, can you be praying for me about this? Just bringing things to light. And I think when I'm in seasons where I don't have that and I'm trying to just do everything on my own and trying to just muscle my way through it, and those are the times that I'm just discouraged, and I probably struggle the most. And I think it's when I'm living in integrity and saying, you know what, I want to live in freedom and truth. And a part of that is bringing things and being transparent. And so I think that's what I was getting at with that third law, is that, integrity does allow you to be your best self, because a lot of times we try to maybe put on a mask. I know that's been relevant the last few years, but I mean, I think before even the last 2 years, are you putting on a mask? Are you trying to be someone that you're not? And I think in doing that, you're exhausted. You're so exhausted from living that life.
You're so right. I think with any of us, we can look back at careers or maybe at home and we think, why didn't this person promote me? Why didn't I get the job? And we have options here. We can either get bitter and hold on to that, or we can let it go, because that person who got the promotion, who probably we think in our mind didn't deserve it, or when our manager misjudged us, or when we didn't get that opportunity, or we didn't get the start, or we were sitting on the bench when someone else had the opportunity, or maybe a relationship didn't work out. When we hold on to those, it slows us down. It's like the other person, like I love your analogy about the rocks. It's not like they're going to, sometimes they may never even know about it, but we can live free. So that leads to law number 4. Maybe in just closing, you can tell us about that. Law number 4, integrity
frees you to live.
Frees you to live, right?
Yeah, I was looking for these. Here's what I was trying to grab. So imagine this tennis ball right here. For anyone that's watching on video, imagine this tennis ball is like a lack of integrity. And this is something that when I tell someone a lie, I'm just gonna scoot back here. So when I tell someone a lie and I'm maintaining this lie right here, I can still pretty easily maintain it. Like, and for you guys listening on the podcast, I have one tennis ball that I'm throwing up and down, right? But as I get more crafty with my lies, I start adding things to it. I'm going to grab another ball, and now I start juggling 2 balls in the air. And as you can see, I can still pretty easily, I can juggle 2 pretty effectively. Mm-hmm. But then as I keep going, maybe I'm confident, now I've added a 3rd ball and I start juggling. And what you'll notice is if you look at my eyes, I can actually still look at the camera and I can still be crafty with the
I'm impressed
that I'm telling. Yeah, thanks. And finally, what I want to show, when I add another ball to the mix, so now for you listening, I have 4. This is what happens at some point when you just start adding and you start juggling and going and going. Here's what happens. I can't, as you'll see you probably couldn't see on the video, on the audio there, I dropped them all. Like there was a pending explosion waiting to happen. And I think in the same way in our lives, for that last law that you just said, it's like you are freed up to live when you kind of take a ball and you put it down and say, you know what, I feel like I'm juggling everything right now. I feel like I have a million things going on. I feel like I've already gone down the road of messing up, so I might as well keep messing up. I've done something to wrong someone, but I might as well keep going. That's the lies that we hear. And so I think integrity truly does free you not only to be your best self, but it frees you to live moving forward in freedom. And so I think that's just something for me that it's a daily thing. It's not really you do it once and you're good for life. living with integrity is a constant daily thing, and that we're never going to have perfect. But I just think when we think about our lives, and if we're truly honest and introspective, there's probably areas that we could surrender and bring into the light to live in more integrity, so that we can be freed up to live. So that if you're listening right now and there's an area of your life that you feel like you're juggling, it's like, man, bring that to the light, so you can walk in freedom in that area.
Alex, that is awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for writing this book with Jon Gordon. For those listening, how do people get in touch with you? How should they buy this book? Is there a particular site? What do you recommend for the audience?
Yeah, so they can go to thesalebook.com. So thesalebook.com. And if you actually get a copy now, if you pre-order, you'll get a action plan, and you'll get the ebook access earlier than other people. So you can do that. But yeah, thesalebook.com. And then I have a company called writemybooks.com, where we help people write, edit, and publish their books. And so, yeah, I'm just super passionate about not only sharing this message, but helping other people steward their story as well. And so, yeah, Dave, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just super honored to be on your show. And I think this is definitely a message that I think needs to be shared and told. And just thank you so much for allowing us to talk about this today.
Well, it's a great book, and I do recommend, corporations, teams, if you want to bring in Alex, bring in Jon to talk to your team about the sale, about living with integrity, about leadership. Alex will be a great leader to do that. Also, Jon Gordon. And so thank you. And also, if you want to write a book and you need help coaching, writing, how do you write a book and publish it? Alex, tell us your site one more time for that.
Yeah, it's writemybooks.com.
Writemybooks.com. I should have found you years ago. It saved me a lot of time.
I think you've done all right, though, with your books over the years. So that's what I've been told. So
well, thank you so much. Alex, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Take care.